Oh, wait. I think I had to press something. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I can hear you all right.
How you doing?
I'm all right.
Not much, man. Just got out of the gym. My hair's still wet from the shower.
Hmm, yeah, that makes sense. I just woke up from a nap. Like, except
Nice.
it wasn't like an actual nap. I just closed my eyes and laid in bed, but I didn't actually go to sleep.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're feeling refreshed.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit refreshed. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, for the first question is, what is your musical background? Like, how did you get into
Uh,
music and all that?
wait, sorry. What was the last part?
How did you get into music and all of that?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I guess I could do a long story short. My dad is a professional saxophone player. He's kind of legendary back in his day. He played with the Temptations and a handful of other big bands at that, back in the time where it was the original bands. And so he was my first inspiration to do music. So I played saxophone a little bit when I was probably in sixth grade up until like mid high school. I started playing a little bit of bass, but then I kind of gave it all up after high school. And somewhere around 22 or 3, so I'm 33 years old. So about a decade ago, I just had a kind of an interest for a hobby standpoint to get into singing, and some of my friends wanted to go to like karaoke events. And then yeah, so then from there, I tried out for a cappella at the college that I graduated from in Orlando, Florida. So then I started, this is right around the time where Pitch Perfect and Pentatonics were making like their, kind of their name. And at that time, I just noticed that I could do the bass thing. And from there, I tried out for the groups at UCF, and I got pretty deep into the acapella world for like, man, probably like 5 years. And then shortly, I started singing professionally at Disney and Universal. So, like, you asked what my background is in music. I didn't really get much training in singing. I kind of was just born naturally a bass, and having a light background of music in middle school and high school, it wasn't too difficult to just like, do what was needed for me for acapella, which essentially is just have the range and then be able to sing in tune. And it's not like you need to do anything really, like other than just pretend to be a bass just on a straight tone. So I didn't have any musical background as far as educational up until probably after I decided I didn't really want to be a bass and a cappella anymore. And then I dated a girl that was going to a school for classical music. And then I studied there on like a full ride scholarship for about a year. It was the first college in Florida. It's called Rollins College. It's in Winter Park, Florida. But yeah, so I studied there for about a year, and then I thought I was going to quit a cappella, but then I got an offer to be in the Street Corner Symphony Band. If you've heard of them, they were. Are you into a cappella at all?
Hmm. No, I'm opera. I'm mostly
Oh,
opera, but yeah.
okay. So then, yeah, at that school, I studied bel canto for about a year. So you must be familiar with bel canto, and very thankful to get that training, even though it wasn't a huge amount of time. I was kind of a crazy person where I would just practice like every day, and I interviewed a lot of the incoming like performers that they had, different like tenors from the Met and stuff like that, and even a bass from the Met. So I recorded a couple private lessons I like pursued setting up with these people, and just continued to practice that. So then from Rollins College doing the bel canto there, I dropped out of there to join this band called Street Corner Symphony. They were on an a cappella TV show on NBC back like I don't even know, like 2000 and I guess 8, but they still had gigs booked out like over a year, and I watched them on that show, so I thought it was cool when they asked me to join, and even though I said I was going to quit a cappella, this opportunity just seemed to be really good. So I took it. And then we recorded a music video or two with like the same studio and music studio and video studio that Pentatonics used. And yeah, so we got to do some fun gigs. And then they replaced me with a Grammy nominated arranger, I guess you could call him. Like he arranges for Take Six, and he's a little bit lower of a natural bass. Like he's more of a profundo than I am, but he has like no upper range. So he replaced me, and I was pretty sad at that point. But I kind of rechanneled being sad for getting replaced from them and to applying to go to Berklee College of Music. So then, are you familiar with Berklee?
Uh, I think so, yeah. I think
Berk
so.
Berkeley's like where John Mayer went to school and Charlie Puth, and it's more of a pop jazz school, but they're right next door to the Boston Conservatory, which that's more like operatic.
Hmm.
Do you know the Boston Conservatory?
I do know the word conservatory, but I don't know the word. Never heard the Boston Observatory, conservatory, sorry, in particular.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So, well, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty world. Both of them are pretty world renowned for their education there for music, and yeah, so I went to Berkeley because I was more interested in kind of pop music and jazz, and now I'm kind of doing like a funk rock and roll band. But yeah, so essentially, um, my musical background, that's kind of how I got into it, and then I went to Rollins for a bit, had some training there, Berkeley for a bit. I dropped out of Berkeley actually to join a Elvis tribute band, and we toured like on an arena show all over Europe for about 3 to 4 months. And one of the people in that band was in the same band as Elvis Presley for about 1,000 concerts. So I was filling in the original section of Elvis's band. I mean, there was only one member still alive, and it was him. But it was for the Stamps Quartet, which was what Elvis used for his background vocals for pretty much, like uh, the guy that was in the band with me and Elvis. His name's Eddie Knock, and the other guy that was in the Stamps was the original Guinness Book of World Records lowest voice. If you've heard of J.D. Sumner,
Yeah,
you've
I've
heard of
heard
J.
of Dave Summer. And
Yeah,
he's
J.
decent.
Okay, yeah, JD was he was kind of like Elvis's backup singer that was a bass, and it was a fascinating thing because not a lot of singers today obviously have a background singer that's a bass, but that was Elvis's like favorite thing is low voice stuff. I feel like Elvis a lot kind of tried to sing lower, but he couldn't really do it because he was more of a tenor baritone. But yeah, so
Like,
I had
like
to
a high
sing JD.
baritone, perhaps, in my
Huh?
opinion. In my opinion, I would say a high baritone.
Yeah, high baritone, low tenor. His
Yeah,
voice kind
something
of
around that.
changed a bit over the years. But yeah, so I was filling in for J.D. Sumner in that original section of Elvis's band called the Stamps Quartet. So I had to sing like all of the music that was the original recordings and the original keys that J.D. used to sing, and it was pretty like intense and kind of stressful because I had to sing like down to a C1 on just like live shows like every night as like usually the grand finale of the show, but a lot of times we would do an encore. But we it's a song, it's an Elvis Presley song. It's called Way Down. You could look it up. It's on like Spotify and everything.
I think that Jeff
But
Kawaguchi himself tried to um make a cover of it,
oh
right?
nice. So you've heard
Yeah,
of it. Yeah, you've heard of
yeah,
the song. Yeah,
yeah. I
so I
also have
was
heard
the
many
original.
bass. Sorry, I also heard many bass singers try singing some sort of way on down, and
Yeah, yeah, that's the song.
and they always like to challenge themselves to sing like C1 or something.
Yep, that because that's the original melody of the song there for the background vocal. It goes down to a C1 in that recording from all the way back when that was recorded, like probably in like the 60s or something or 70s. probably the 70s, I guess. But yeah, so that was, definitely a challenge doing that live for a long time. And yeah, so and then since that, I moved back to Florida, where I'm from. I started playing again at Disney and Universal Studios. But now I was working as a lounge singer where I would play guitar and sing just like pop music or whatever people requested. And that's kind of still what I do at this point. Now I'm out in Los Angeles, and I have an agent. So it's kind of funny. My agent, he really only likes when I sing like tenor oldies and pop music. He doesn't really like that I'm a bass at all. It's kind of funny, like because that's who I make a living from is this guy, and like he just wants me to sing like Justin Timberlake stuff.
Anyway,
So
and so how would you describe your own voice type? Like
that's a great question. Yeah, it's boggled my mind a lot over the years. So like when I probably always had an interest in singing, but when I was, like how old are you? You look like you're like 18 or 20 or something.
oh yeah, I'm 19.
19, yeah. So uh, around that time, I probably had an interest in singing, but I remember, probably trying it privately, like in the shower or like when I was driving. And I remember not being able to sing anything at all, like anything that was on the radio, because as you know, it's all majority baritone and tenor music, like Ed Sheeran and Bruno Mars and that type of thing. So I couldn't do that, but I could sing women's music down the octave,
Yeah,
like
because
Adele or
women,
something like that. Huh?
yeah, because women, female voices often croon. They don't engage in their high notes as much as male singers do in pop music,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
relative to
yeah.
like their own ranges.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like Adele or, like that type of thing. So I could do that like down the octave, or I could sing, like just in my falsetto, like, pop music like Bruno Mars and that type of thing. But yeah, so I guess I was always naturally like a bass person as a voice type, but the question is complex to answer because uh, when I was studying bel canto at that classical school, um, a lot of people told me, like voice teachers and just people that I knew that I was friends with that were like pedagogues, they always classified me as a bass, but I kind of like sort of broke out of that, I guess, with training into, now singing as a tenor for many hours a night, but more in a pop context. Like I'm not singing operatic tenor. I have made attempts. I don't know if you've ever seen I sing a C5 in an attempt to use like bel canto like a tenor. Did you see that video on YouTube?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I saw it.
Okay, so yeah, I'm curious to hear your take on that because that was my best attempt to kind of harness my bel canto and sing, as if that was like a C5 for a tenor, where I don't do that like almost ever. I feel like almost never, especially for a living, because that would wear me out if I had to do that. Uh, you know, all the time for an extended period of time. But I have learned from Berkeley how to kind of use more of a mixed voice belt. Berkeley, being a more of a contemporary school. So I sing in my mixed belt in a tenor range for many hours at this point. I've kind of built up my ability to do that and sustain that. And I find that much easier than trying to project, in like an operatic tenor range because I'm not a tenor. I'm really, in my opinion at this point, I would classify me, if you want to give me like some type of operatic, bel canto classification, I would say just like a regular bass, but it's odd because I guess, there's different, you can get more specific in your classifications. Like I know there's things like held in tenor, which is an interesting thing. If you're familiar with held in tenor.
Yeah, I am familiar with that term.
Yeah, so held in tenor is interesting because I don't know if I'm even really that, but that's like one of the closest things I could try to say. Usually held in tenors, they have more of a weight in their upper tenor range, but they can sing down to bass. So I don't really
I
have
mean,
that weight in my upper range. What?
sorry to interrupt, but
That's okay.
Eldon tenors don't usually go down to bass. They they may go down to like maybe a high baritone,
Right, right.
but yeah, sorry.
No,
Okay.
you're that's a good distinction because I didn't mention anything about like how low they go, but just kind of like you just said, is they're more of even like a baritone range, and then they bring that low baritone range up into a tenor range. So that's not really what I am, because I'm singing like you're mentioning is a lot lower than that, but into the range of a regular tenor as well. So yeah, it's tough to really say. And then on top of that, I've been training my flageolet register, my upper falsetto, and those ranges as well into like a countertenor ranges. So it's really tough to try to throw what I'm working on, into a specific voice type, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one, I would just say bass, but that's hyper generalizing because, most people that sing bass, they're not singing tenor as well, or, countertenor.
Yeah, so anyways, I can kind of relate to you with the high notes, even back in the old days when I was actually a mid to low tenor, which may not sound like it right now, because right now my speaking voice does sound weak and thin to some extent, but I am a high baritone, and I'm being trained operatically as one. And a few years ago, I was a tenor, and even then, I struggled with high notes. Like,
Mm.
like it's not just
Yep, there's
bass.
still a struggle. There's still a
Yeah,
struggle for me.
yeah. And
But
uh, and I don't feel quite as much tension as I used to, but still, and a part of me kind of is proud that I naturally slowly developed into a baritone by now, but a part of me also feels like part of me is also rather jealous of some of my favorite opera singers who can sing like the C5 and chest voice. So like I kind of have mixed feelings about it by now. I mean, I used to focus mostly on my low range and I want to be a bass. And I still somewhat do, but not as much anymore. And
likewise.
yeah, sometimes I feel in the mood for like wishing I was a bass. Sometimes I'm in the mood for being proud of what I am. Sometimes I feel like I wish I was a tenor.
Yeah, no,
Sometimes.
I definitely relate to that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and
I
anyways,
was
did you want to be a bass or did you perhaps want to be a baritone or a tenor more?
it shifted kind of like you said, it wasn't ever like solid. But my first intro, it's like when I first, kind of was just having fun singing, I didn't really understand anything about bass, tenor. Like I never looked into singing and all of those things. So I just thought I couldn't sing, and I didn't know that it was because my voice was too low for what the radio had played. So for a long time, I'm just like, I don't know why. I think singing's cool, but I can't seem to do it. And then as I got into a cappella, you know, um, my foot in the door was through the basement, and that worked out very well. And I think getting praised for my ability to do something that nobody else could do definitely grew in my appreciation and gratefulness and excitement about doing it. But maybe about 3 years into that, and kind of rising quickly into like a professional realm of it, between doing it at Disney and Universal and those places, um, I was very jealous quickly from the tenors, and very much felt kind of like I was this person that forever was just going to have to be like in the background, and never could really convey a message and feeling, in the way that I saw the tenors conveying messages and stories and feeling to the audience. And, I was very thankful to be, somebody that could sing the bass, as I could see that that's such a rare thing. But my personal passion very quickly, like within a few years of doing the bass thing and getting praised for that, even, I very quickly realized that my ultimate dream and passion would be in singing higher. And that's why I ultimately quit doing a cappella as bass and went to that classical school, um, that I was fortunate enough to get a full ride scholarship on. And but it's funny because even that, my foot in the door was singing classical bass, but I studied there into my upper range, not making it much further than like maybe baritone and very strained baritone at that time. This is probably 2015, but I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and my big dream was to sing words and convey messages and feelings and tell stories. So yeah, I think pretty much my entire life I always wanted to be a tenor, but I didn't understand that. And my first intro to singing for definitely at least a few years, I was very excited and super obsessed with singing bass and lower as I could as all the time. And to be honest, it's even more complex because I can see that I've made a larger impact in my career and like the internet with my bass singing. So it's almost like you could say I'm fighting against nature by putting so much time into singing tenor, but the fact that I'm now able to do it at a level that is, plenty satisfactory for, my agent that books me, in LA and all around the country. Uh, and he likes that I sing tenor. He likes my tenor. Not only does he, he prefers that I only sing tenor and I never sing bass. Is like what he's told me, like behind closed doors. He's like, if you could just never sing bass and only sing tenor for me, that would be great. I'd really
Oh
appreciate that.
yeah.
You know?
So a similar thing happened to me when I interviewed another bass, and it was a Profondo bass
Yeah.
from Greece, Ioannis
Okay.
Maris. And interestingly, I mean, my voice though wasn't like lower pitched than it usually is. It was more resonant than usually is at the time, and he said that like in his opinion, he thought that my speaking voice was a bass. And I was like, what? That's not
I don't
true.
know. Speaking voice, it's interesting because this topic I find fascinating because I as somebody with a borderline like record level vocal range, what does that really break down to is I could talk anywhere that I can sing, which is like seven-ish plus octaves. Like I could talk in my upper falsetto. That doesn't mean that I'm not a bass. I can talk in my upper mixed voice. That doesn't mean that I'm not a bass. And I think it's interesting because a lot of times I do talk in my upper mixed voice, and that's something I teach my students for voice, is that if you don't have time to warm up throughout the day and you're working, to sing in something high range later in the day, you should be talking in your upper mixed voice pretty much as you are talking. You wouldn't want to be talking in your lowest chest voice if you, aspire to sing tenor later in the day. So, a lot of people don't have time to do like
I mean, the way
like
I
for hours. So you work it into your speech. You
okay.
you warm up as you speak. But then it's funny because then I find ton of people make judgments on whether I'm a tenor or a bass just based on my speaking voice, and I could speak like, "Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you." But like I don't speak like that. A lot of times I speak in my upper mixed voice because I'm warming up to sing tenor later in the day because that's what pays my bills at the moment. So, it's it's tough to make a full judgment on what somebody is based on where they're speaking, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But a lot of people treat it like fact like immediately. It's like that's weird
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
like I find it like one of the most absurd things of all time. It's like,
A lot of people do it. Like the internet is like I've received thousands of those comments. Like
and so far I've heard a lot of videos of your speaking voice, and so far you've never really sounded like a tenor. I mean, it's in
I
some videos
can though. I
okay,
can.
yeah, I can you can, but like in some videos you sounded like a baseman speaking. And most of the time in this
Yeah.
interview right now you are, but sometimes you also speak like a baritone
Like
sometimes.
I feel like right now I'm speaking in a baritone range.
Uh
It's like upper bass, lower baritone range.
yeah, that sounds about right.
But
Yeah.
I think it comes more down to necessarily not just the notes that your voice is kind of living on. It really matters most where can you project and where does your resonance live, because like some people can, they can do vocal fry these days, and I have, tutorials that, my most popular video I think is a tutorial for how to sing lower, mainly leaning into subharmonics, but that doesn't make you a profundo bass just because you're singing in that range. Because why, as I was saying, is you don't have a natural resonance there, and that's what makes somebody like super special. Like I was just took a peek through your channel, and I saw you had what's his name, Eric Holloway.
Oh yeah.
Like he's obviously he has such a unique, incredible basso profundo voice because his resonance lives in the first octave, you know. So like I have gigs singing lower than I've seen him ever do, but that doesn't mean that I'm a profundo, even though I'm singing in a professional light, uh, lower than anything I've seen him do, because I don't have the resonance that he has. He's a powerhouse, like a freaking cannon, just talking in the first octave. And I don't, I have first octave notes in a natural chest voice, but it's very rare. It's like, it's fleeting, and I have to work at it and almost change my entire vocal regiment to chase those notes. It's not where my voice naturally lives unless I just like wake up in the morning. And when I wake up in the morning, I usually talk somewhere within the first octave, but then that goes away as soon as I have a cup of coffee and start warming up. But, I can work towards not warming that voice up. And that was what I did when I had to sing JD Sumner's music live for months at a time in these big arena shows. I completely changed my regiment to be more of a bass voice, uh, reading regiment. And, you know, it's a fascinating topic, like, bringing your voice into different regiments, because as somebody with a large voice range, what I sound like, and what I speak like and what I sing like in a sustainable way has so much to do with how I've been treating my voice lately.
Yeah. And so
So
and so I know that the top definitely came with lots of practice and that uh it wasn't always there, but like how have your low notes changed since you were young?
that's another tough question to answer, because I didn't really study voice at all until I started doing it and then quickly doing it professionally around my early 20s. So in my, basic memory, I think I always had natural bass range, but I probably always spoke in an upper baritone range just for no reason. But I could notice it sometimes, like, I don't know, especially if I got sick or something, like it seemed like my voice was oddly low, and then maybe people would mention it. So I remember that a couple times in high school. And yeah, I think over time, as you become more of an avid singer, that's going to just open up your voice in the low end, but also the high end, just all over. Because I'm going vocal teacher right now, but like as your as your breath support increases, you're going to get louder, on your upper end and your lower end. And also, as you continue to work out these muscles of just singing all the time, they're going to get stronger. So, with all of that combined, my lower range has definitely filled out over the years and kind of smoothed out as well as, the upper range. And I think all of that goes hand in hand. And I'm super, obsessive nerdy with the vocal stuff, and I kind of have been since my early 20s. So I've pushed the low end and I pushed the high end like kind of the entire time. So yeah, I mean, I guess so to answer your question, it's sort of just continued to fill out over the years, but I didn't start measuring it until like my early 20s.
So okay, so uh so by which extent did you gain the low end over the years? Like to which extent? Like what was your lowest note in chest voice like in your early 20s and your lowest by now?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say early 20s. I was able to I was able to push comfortably with resonance even into my early 20s, like a D2, and always, that was kind of always like my money note back then. I could skim the bottom of like a C2 enough to get by, and oddly, that, coming from a professional bass standpoint and even a hobbyist base or an acquire standpoint, it seemed like C2 was such a significant note to so many people in my life. It's funny almost like are you familiar with the band Voctiv?
Yes. Yes.
So the director and the music, the arranger and music director of that group, Voctiv, his name is Jamie Ray, and he was my professor for a lot of different classes at Rollins College, which is where I was going for free for classical. And I remember when I first met him, you know, around the time I ended up getting a scholarship, and when he, in my first semester had me join all of the upper groups for the choir and their more contemporary a cappella group that does a lot of Voices of Liberty music because he also is music director for Voices of Liberty. Um, he directly, like, the first thing he asked me when I went in his office for my audition was, "How's your C2?"
So I did once project an A1 in chest voice. It was
Nice.
but it was very temporary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the voice fluctuates a lot, like I was saying, based on how you treat it. I mean, I bet every day, you sound pretty, like you said, I mean, like you're a strong baritone. And as a baritone, you know, as anybody else, the voice is flexible and it changes a lot even throughout the day. I imagine if you tried when you woke up in the morning, you probably within, 5 minutes could project A1s at least once a week, depending on if you didn't have a lot of water to drink the day before or had alcohol or smoked a cigarette or something like that, or, had a light cold the next day, you're going to probably have that range. But as your vocal cords then hydrate, as you start pumping blood and you're not like snoring, essentially it's going to warm up and it's going to, then those notes are going to go away. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you had an A1 more often than you might know. If you checked yourself as soon as you woke up, I bet you'd probably have it like once a week. But then it's not gonna get you any gigs. So that's the thing that really matters is like where where does your low end bottom out typically even throughout the entire day. And that's what matters most, I think, in you know, yeah. Because otherwise, like, what's the point? If you end up getting a gig where somebody's like wants you to sing an A1 and then you can't do it, then like you're gonna make everyone mad.
Yeah, that's but anyways, it's in about 5 minutes. I mean, we're gonna have to restart part of it. So like we're gonna do a quick part two for like about 20 minutes. Is
Okay.
that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, Yeah. So what advice do you have for young basses?
Um, as far as singing or getting into like more of an active part of the scene or just all around?
All around, I guess.
Okay, well, I guess for singing, and developing your chops, just doing it as much as you possibly can, getting involved and different situations where you have to read and just have to sing. I think looking back at my history, what really kind of shaped me out the most quickest, I got lucky, is that um, after the first a cappella group I joined, which was kind of like a big, I don't want to say dumpster fire, but like it kind of was like a mess. Um, but it was a good time. It was honestly probably like the most fun I've ever had in a musical scenario. But man, we weren't very good. But after that, I got into a very competitive, tiny group, very much modeling the pentatonics structure. And then at that point, I was heavily relied on in an acoustic setting, often to project bass over like five or six other people. So that really helped me grow a lot. Is just for the shit, for the sake of my life and just the group sound, depending on me in acoustic scenarios, I had no choice but to figure out how to project my voice as long as I could, as healthy as I could, and as loud as I could for, a long period of time. So I would say, yeah, that if you can get in an a cappella group that's small and you're singing in an acoustic setting, which is pretty much what most colleges seem to do for a cappella, but probably high school, I imagine as well. I didn't get into a cappella at that time. So I would say finding an a cappella, if group with some people that are serious or not, but being the only bass of a group, that's really going to fill you out musically and vocally. And then also that kind of got me down the road of finding more opportunities, especially being in a place like Orlando, where a cappella is still very much in demand with the theme parks. So, yeah, I mean, advice that vocally just start doing it, whatever scenario you can get involved in, do it. Even things like street performing really helped me a lot to grow. And then yeah, forcing yourself to be in a group where you're heavily relied on and you can't just disappear into like other bases where it's like you're the only base there, so it's like if the base is wrong, people look at you. So it's like when you have nowhere to run and hide, it forces you to get your shit together. So I'd say, yeah, definitely joining a small group helped me a lot. Uh, and then playing an instrument, I think that's also huge. Learning how to play guitar or piano, even, to the most basic level where you can accompany yourself on simple tunes, that will immensely help you grow. And it almost, in a philosophical way, kind of will set you free, because what you'll find very quickly, is it's very much different than playing with a track or a band or anything of that nature like karaoke, because what you'll find is you're in charge of the tempo, so it sort of just like opens up a whole new world of you know going faster, going slower, and communicating and musically in a way that you might not have ever even known exists and is of any excitement. But to me, learning how to play basic guitar uh, really was life changing as far as like my enjoyment and fulfillment of music. And yeah, so I'd highly recommend playing an instrument. So those would be the three things: get involved somewhere, anywhere you can, and just start singing as much as you can. Uh, to play an instrument, and what was the third one? I can't remember. But yeah, those are big.
Yeah, so pretty soon we're gonna have to it's like right now I'm gonna temporarily end it and then about in about like 1 or 2 minutes we'll come back.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.